In my very short experience as a listening volunteer for an organization that aims to provide emotional support for people in emotional distress and who are struggling with life, I had to talk and listen. Many of the people I listened to had no one else to talk to. They were truly alone people. You don't see them on the street. They are trapped in their own houses, alone, fighting with anxiety, depression, and fear. Mr. Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, and most welcome guests. Today, I'm not going to speak about depression, fear, nor anxiety, but happiness. Happiness is something that challenged for thousands of years writers, poets, psychologists, philosophers. And my real challenge tonight is to share with you in less than 6 minutes this entire knowledge. Well, what is happiness? What takes to be happy? Can we be happy all the time? Well, hard to say. First of all, I'm going to let you know why we can't be happy all the time and what happiness is. Well, this is a tough one. Probably 1 hour wouldn't be enough to define happiness. But very briefly said, happiness is a state of well-being, positive emotions towards life and towards us. It's something like what we feel when we meet here all together. And now, why we can't be happy all the time? Well, this is a difficult one. And I can provide you with 3 explanations. One of them, very simple, is the fact that happiness depends less on objective conditions, things we have around us, and comparing us with our ancestors thousands of years ago, we could say we are very powerful. We've got everything we need. We've got lights, we've got cars, we've got heat, we've got smartphones, and all these sort of things that are designed to make our life easier. But are we happier than those were and those people in the past were? Well, it doesn't look to me like we are. Why? Well, as I said, if conditions improve, our expectations get higher as well, and we just end up being as dissatisfied as before. A second explanation, it has something to do with our biochemical system in our brain. Well, you know, happiness comes when the brain produces dopamine. So dopamine production has something to do with our happiness. But the problem here, and maybe Charles Darwin, if he would have lived, he would have told us that the nature doesn't care about happiness. The nature doesn't want us to be happy all the time. If he would have been happy all the time, probably we wouldn't have survived, right? And a third explanation, which is, I'd say, rather pessimistic in regards to human nature, it says that we maybe simply don't know what happiness is. We don't understand what happiness is, and we rather tend to align our self-illusions with the more prevailing collective illusions in our society. It's like when my mother always tells me to get a wife, have children, and so on. Yes, so we have seen all these problems until now. So what's the solution? I gave you the bad news. What solution can we find to this? A very important psychologist, Martin Seligman, which is very well known in the community, scientific community for his theories about positive psychology and well-being, wants us, in order to be happy, to live not 1, but 3 lives. So we've got the pleasant life. This is the life where we all feel pleasure, we all feel positive emotions, but I would rather call them functional emotions. Functional emotions can be either positive and negative. For example, I was very anxious, very worried before this presentation. That was a negative emotion, but was functional because it helped me to do something, to prepare. Well, I don't know how well I'm prepared, but I will see. So this is the pleasant life. It's the life where you feel pleasure. But here you have to be careful with the pleasure, because pleasure usually requires more pleasure, and this leads to addiction sometimes. And here, as a tip, I would suggest you to make a list with all the behaviors that gives you pleasure and try to put them in practice. Hobbies, passions, everything that gives you pleasure. The good life, the second life, is the life, it's a bit like the pleasant life, but it's a bit more sophisticated. It requires you more analysis, more involvement. It requires you to know yourself, to know your strong points and your weak points, and to develop your strong points in order to be able to find those activities in your life that give you satisfaction, that gives you meaning. And finally, the meaningful life. And here, the things are getting very interesting. Because on a pleasant life, maybe you need some money to put into practice those hobbies. On the good life, maybe you weren't that lucky to find a job. On the meaningful life, the things are absolutely free. It means to find your values. What are your values? What you stand for? What defines you the most? Do something larger than you. Volunteering, helping someone, fighting for a good cause. This is the meaningful life, and we all can do this. And I think all three lives together, pleasant life, good life, and meaningful life, along with the fact that we are not immortals on this world, can make some change in our life, and why not? We can improve a bit of the world. Thank you very much. Have to go back now.